The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, this is Oliver from JNC. I'm hoping everyone can hear me. There is a little box on your right hand side where you can answer or type in any questions. If I could just get a couple of people just to make sure, just type something in there just to say hello and that you can hear me. But we'll just wait a few minutes. We'll just wait a few more minutes. It's not quite 10 o'clock yet, just for a few more people to arrive. Oh, brilliant. People can hear me. That's great. So I make that 10 o'clock. I know we were expecting a few more people, but what I'll do is we'll begin now, and those people who aren't available can get a video of this later on. So for those that you don't know me, my name's Oliver Carney. I've been with JNC for just over 4 years now. So I'm just going to go through this webinar, and we're just going to touch on a few topics. So what we're looking to sort of go over and cover today is basically our constructionmanager.net. So simply put, this is going to be our next generation software. So historically, if some of you don't know or haven't used this yet, this is basically going to be a web interface. So during this webinar, I'll be using Google Chrome, but you can use Safari, Internet Explorer, etc. Which means it becomes practically very useful, things like purchase orders, remote timesheets, and subcontractor emailing, which I'm going to show you. So these have real-time, real updates. It's going to save a huge amount of time on admin and just give you a more active, live job costings, basically. And we've added a few little features in that for extra security that I'll cover in a moment. So as I mentioned, it's mobile friendly. So these are just a couple of screenshots that I'll show you later on. So we've got our timesheets and our purchase ordering, a brief view of our timesheet screen, and the purchase orders here as well. So I'm just going to begin this demonstration. But the one thing I would just like to say is, some of you have already found there is a slide or a section on the panel, which I believe will be on your right hand side, where you can add any questions, and I'll try and do my best to answer those as we go on. However, afterwards, either myself or a couple of my colleagues will be getting in touch to get your feedback on this. And if I can end this, that would be great. There we go. So what you see, as I mentioned, what you see is something probably you're all very familiar with, which is our desktop construction manager. And one thing I would just say at the moment, I'm only going to try and keep this to about 45 minutes, so it is a quick overview. But what I've got now on the screen is our constructionmanager.net. So as I mentioned, I'm using Google Chrome, but you can use any web browser. And you simply go to constructionmanager.net, put your username and password in, and it brings you up onto this screen. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the purchase ordering. So very similar to the supplier purchase ordering on the desktop version. We simply go into supplier pop. And the way that we've developed this technology is that it still uses the same database. So here, my last purchase order number was 112. If I go into the desktop version and go into my suppliers and supplier pop, it uses the same, or it should use the same numbering system. And a rookie mistake, have I opened up the wrong data? No. I'll come back to that in a second. But on here, what it does is it uses the same data. So whether you're using the .NET or the desktop or the mobile app, which I'm about to show you, the process, it still uses the same numbering, there's still data, and everything basically is on one system. So on here, we've got this is my smartphone. This is just a Samsung Galaxy S8, but down at the bottom we can put in the new purchase orders. So if you're on site or at a trade counter, you can click on new, and then this is going to bring up a new purchase order screen. So this is basically very similar to the desktop and the .NET. It's just graphically slightly different, just so it can fit onto a mobile phone. So all you do is you click on your supplier. I've got a list of my suppliers, so I can allocate one there. I can put in a delivery date if I want to, but then I've got today's date as the order date, and then we've got your product codes. So you could just use your text product codes, or down here I've got a list of all my suppliers' prices. So if I'm at a trade counter and I just want to put just some materials that we've ordered, I can put on those materials, and then I can allocate it to my job, either to my maintenance job or to my contract. So on here, I'm just going to allocate it to my contract. I'm going to put it to this job 1021. I can allocate it to any of my tender codes. I've got my quantity, I've got my price, so I'm just going to say this is £500. And if I'm being completely lazy, I can just put as a total, because I could just, if I'm ordering 30 items from a trade counter, I could just put a group sum in here. But if I want to itemize it out, I can click on the little plus icon, and I can click save. And if I want to take a photo of that order, I can attach that to that as well. Click on save, and that then's going to allocate the next purchase order number. So we've got number 114. So when we refresh here, we've got our purchase order number 114 for our £500. Now the screen here is very similar to the desktop version, but on here we've made a few improvements. So this applies across the whole of .NET, where I can then, for my particular user account, I can show or display any of these information. So for example, project managers may have a different view from people in the accounts and so forth, but we've got a wider range of columns here, and you can add those for your particular needs, so you can see the relevant information for you. Also, one of the benefits for the Construction Manager.net is the GRN process. So because this is on a web browser, I can now do this from site as well. So for example, I can just, as you would on the desktop, just click on the purchase order, click on the GRNs, and yet again, as you would on the desktop version, we've got what we've ordered, the unit price, and how many to be delivered. So I could say, well, in this case, I've received all of them. I can put the delivery date and delivery note number, or if everything's turned up, I can click receive all, click save, and that's your delivery note on constructionmanager.net and also on the desktop. So with the access rights, we can give, say, a site supervisor access to only the GRN. So they won't be able to put on purchase orders, edit them, any invoices. The access rights are very similar to the desktop version, but it means now that we can give a supervisor access to those delivery notes so that they can put on the system as soon as the order has turned up. And we would generally recommend having this as a either as a tablet or as a laptop on site, just because there's quite a bit of information. Sometimes a smartphone's just a little bit too small for the practical use of it. And then, as I mentioned before, we've got our desktop version. Go back into our purchase orders, and that purchase order number's there as well. So yet again, the accounts can still use the desktop version if they want to, but our long-term plan is to move everyone over to the sort of .NET. But at the moment, there's no sort of end of life for the desktop one. I will just iterate that. This is still the Construction Manager.net is still in development. So unless there's any questions regarding that, we can move on to the labour timesheets. Yet again, this is also mobile friendly. So I'm just going to go back here. And with the access rights, we can set them up so that they can enter their own timesheets for the week. So every day, ideally every day, I mean, you could do it at the end of the week, but probably best just to keep on top of it daily. They can just click on edit current timesheet, and this is then going to bring up my information, the jobs that I've been on. So here I've done some maintenance jobs, but I can then just click on the plus icon, either allocate it to a maintenance job or a contract. I can allocate my contract. I'm just going to do that home extension one. put any details that I've done. Let's just go fixed hole in wall. I've got my pay rate, so we can pick up the different pay rates that that employee gets, so whether it's hourly, overtime, expenses, etc. Yet again, tenders is for the tender budgets. Start date, start time, so I can say I actually started at, I'll just say I started at 9. And then down here I can put how many hours I've done. So let me say I've just done 2 hours on this job. I can calculate that. So that tells me that I finished at 11 o'clock. And then I can just click the save button or add another line if I'm adding it to either a different tender code or a different job. And ideally that's now saved. So we've got our total hours down. But one of the benefits here is we've got a little button on here for timesheets complete, so that if I, at the end of the week on Friday, want to mark my timesheets as complete, that will mark the timesheet as complete. And what that does is that will then inform the office that I have marked my timesheet as complete. So when we go into the timesheets, the labour and timesheets, very similar to the desktop. This was the week ending date that we've just done. We can go in here and we can see that down at the bottom I've added in this 2 hours for the job 1021. And on here, this is where we've got a time date stamp of who's marked that as complete. So this tells the office that the employee has finished that timesheet, but also if I don't agree that he's done 2 hours on that job, I can change that to 1. I can lock the timesheet and save it. And that means that this adjusts his hours so that the accounts and payroll have final say over what that employee is going to get paid. And down, if we go back to the timesheets, what we can then also do is they can see their recent timesheets. So because we've locked that one, we can then go back into that timesheet. So this timesheet's due to end tomorrow, but I'm finishing it today. And I can see what hours that we've got. And even on that home extension now, we've got the 1 hour. So he can go through his timesheets for the week and see what he's actually going to get paid. So whether it's just hourly, overtime, expenses, all that information can be done. So in the sense that it's just taken a couple of minutes to process, there's no extra work that the office has to do about manually adding those timesheets onto the system, but also you've got the added security that the office has final say on what that employee gets paid. I'm hoping that you all can hear me. There's no questions coming on, so I'm hoping that all makes sense to everyone. So if there's no questions regarding that, we will hopefully move over to the subcontractors, which means we'll probably be finished very early. Oh, and one thing to mention with the timesheets. So the principles are still the same as the desktop. We can highlight the timesheets that we want. We can look at the reports and we can either do a summary of them if you're not linking to payroll and you want to give these to your accountant. They're not the best examples, but we've got the different hourly pay rates on here, and we've got a summary of how many hours, the rate, and we can send that off. And all these reports are all customizable and can easily be changed. And if we had one with a little bit more information, go into the reports, and then we've got one for the breakdown. Which yet again, this then shows the breakdown for each employee for each timesheet. We've got the jobs, the tender code, which are the budgets, dates, hours, the week work. Here we've got a time that this employee was on site, which pay rate, his hours, what he's going to get paid, because we've got the factor, which is the uplift factor for the cost of employment. We've then got the cost, and we can also deal with the charge out rate. But yet again, all these reports, everything that you see on this screen can be stripped back if you don't want that information on this report. What we can also do with the timesheets is when you're entering them on, we can actually give a site manager access to put the timesheets on for his gang or the people that are on site. We set this up very similar way in the access rights, in that they can put people's timesheets on, but they wouldn't be able to see what they get paid. So if they've got either, whether it's 4 or 5 or 40, they can put their time on for that day, each day. They can do that either going into the timesheets module and entering that day on for that timesheet, or we've also got the planner, which has an actual, which we won't be showing here, but we can demonstrate that at another time. But the thing I just want to mention is that the labour timesheets and the planner all both link together. So when you edit his timesheets on the planner, they automatically change on the timesheets as well. So yet again, I'm hoping that all makes sense and that you guys can still hear me. But if there are any questions, just please enter them in the tab on the right hand side. So if there's no questions regarding that, I will go on to the subcontractor modules and the subcontractor emailing. Okay. So thank you, Amy. So on here, we're partway through the subcontractor module. So at present, we've got the subcontractor emailing list. So anything that you create, whether it's the worksheet, certificates, returns, payments, all on the desktop, we can group email these. So the email functionality in here is so much better than what it is on the desktop. So for example, if I go into the returns, what we can do is highlight the return that we're after. In this case, I'm going to, well, there's actually 3 there, so I can just highlight these. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back a bit, just because I want a little bit more data in here. We've got 2 different employees down here, so I'm going to select those. Click on email, and what this will do is this will then send 2 emails, or in this case 2 emails, but 1 email per subcontractor. So on here, it's going to populate with their email address. It's going to generate, we've got a template for this email, so we've got a subject for the email, the body of the text, and the template that we want to send. And then simply click send, and that will then send 1 email per subcontractor. So if you've got 30, 40, 100 subcontractors on your monthly return, or that you want to send out any payment certificates or worksheets or anything like that, you can highlight all that information, click on email, and it will send out 1 email per subcontractor. So for example, if you've obviously got the monthly returns, but if a subcontractor is looking at all the certificates that they've done for over the year, we can then just filter that by that subcontractor, Control A to select all, and then here we can just click email certificates, and we can send out 1 email with all that information on there for you. But also with the added security within the subcontractors, what we've done is within each subcontractor, we can set a password. Generally, we would recommend using their UTR number because it's something they're going to know off the top of their head. But so down in the bottom, we can set a password so that when we send that email, instead of them getting a PDF copy of that layout, return, certificates, payments, etc., it will then send a web link. hyperlink, which will, when they click on that, they'll need to put their username and password in, and then it will open up in their web browser the document that you've sent across. So we've got that added security so that no emails get sent to the wrong subcontractor with the sensitive information on it. That is generally everything I wanted to go through. It is just a little taster of what we've got. What I should say is we are currently developing the rest of the .NET modules. So what we've got available is we've got the quotes modules, we've got supplier purchase order, subcontractor emailing, we've got the whole maintenance manager software. So that's all live, and we've got loads of customers using that. We've also got the planner and the labor module as well. They're all live and in use by various customers of ours. What we're looking to do over the next 12 months is probably move the rest of the construction manager software. So on here, where we're looking at sales applications, subcontractor invoicing, and the job costings for the construction manager. So they're the sort of, they are technically only 3 modules, but they're 3 very big modules. But we set ourselves a very ambitious plan over the next sort of 12 to 18 months to get those up and running so that we can slowly move everyone over to constructionmanager.net. So we've just got a couple of questions here that I'll go through. Are you able to post supplier invoices to Sage? Yes, we are. So I did miss that, which is a very good question. So on here we've marked this. So this was the purchase order that we did earlier. We've marked that as complete, and we can now invoice it. So click on invoice. The reference and X reference are the ones that are going to be in Sage. So reference, I'm assuming, is your invoice number. We'll automatically put the PO number in there, and then the invoice date. Click continue. I've got a setting set up so it recognizes that I need to use a unique supplier reference, but I'm going to post that anyway. So that's another little feature that we've done. And then that invoice, click save. That invoice has been posted to Sage as you do, and you can see here that there's 0 outstanding. So that invoice has been posted to Sage. So Cindy, is there any way of knowing the PO came from the mobile? Yes, that is true. So on the right hand side, we've got a created time. So this would be the user's login details. So everyone would have a unique login detail for either the mobile or .NET. And we can also, if I activate the columns, I can see when and who modified it as well. Can you send individual emails? Well, in fact, let me just show you this. So we've got the modified time and modified date on there as well. Can you send individual emails on the desktop version? If not, do you have plans to change this? So all our emailing is going to be done. So all the development work now is going to be done on our constructionmanager.net. So all the emailing work that we've done, that's going to be done on .NET. You can send an email, so you can save it either as a PDF and use your own emailing system. There is a very crude emailing system on the desktop, but not a lot of we basically made the decision quite a long time ago that Outlook and Thunderbird and other programs were far superior, so we let them deal with the emailing rather than, but that was one of the things that we've done on .NET, as you can see, via both the subcontractors, but any part you can email out. Post stock button, the PO. So for Cindy, the PO post to stock button shows stock movement on Sage. Yes, and that is the same for both the .NET and desktop. So if I go into this purchase orders, this will then post the stock to Sage. So it will use Sage's stock count. And at the moment, we don't have that facility on .NET, but on the desktop, you can then go into your suppliers and products and take that out of stock and allocate that cost to a job. But that's one of the ones that we will be moving over to .NET as well. Timesheets, at what point does this post to payroll? It posts to payroll when you let me double check. I believe still the posting to payroll can be done on the desktop version, unless my access rights have been changed. They'll be posted to payroll at the same point that you do at the moment. Go into timesheets, highlight the timesheets in question, and then you can post those. So they're still done at the same point as you do at the moment. So are the timesheets raised and entered in the desktop version visible on .NET? Yes. The way we've developed the system, it uses the same database. So probably the easiest way to think about it is Construction Manager desktop can be on one PC and your .NET could be on another, and you can use them both at the same time. It still uses the same database, so it still uses the same customer list, supplier list, job numbers, invoice numbers, purchase order numbers, etc. It's just a different interface. So that's everything that I kind of wanted to show you. As I mentioned earlier, if you do have any questions, please type them in now and I can see if I can answer them. As I said, this is just a sort of brief overview of what we've done, and either myself or my colleagues will be in touch today or the beginning of next week just to follow up on these, just to see if you've got any further questions, or if you want a live one-to-one demo regarding any of these modules that are available. I'll leave this screen on just for a few more minutes, but as I said, that's everything I wanted to cover. Thank you for attending, and we'll be sending out the video for this, I believe, later on today or beginning of first thing Monday.